welcome to Political Paradigm. I'm Terry Ikumi. Today we turn our attention from the national to the states and discuss how important the subnationals are to nation building and development. My guest today has done well for himself in the private sector. He's a retired managing director of SunTrust Bank who has ventured into politics and is now the PDP governorship candidate in Gombe State in the 2023 elections. He is Mohammed Barde. Mr. Barde, welcome to Political Paradigm.
Thank you very much, Ray.
Let me begin by first congratulating you on being the governorship candidate of the PDP
Thank you very
in
much.
Gombe State.
Thank you very much.
And let me ask you, how did the process go? What's your assessment of the primaries that produced you as candidate?
Well, thank you very much, Ray. The primary elections that were conducted sometime on 25th of May 2022 were actually one of the best primary elections that ever took place in Gombe. I must say that the party leadership, particularly the leader of the state of the party, Dr. Ibrahim Hassan Nagombo, who is also the former governor of Gombe State, and also the executive of the party played a very key and crucial role in ensuring that a level playing ground was actually provided for all aspirants. And both of us, those that emerge as winners and those that were not able to emerge, that God has actually deferred that for them, have all in good state accepted the outcome of the election. One of the best conducted, transparently conducted, free and fair primary elections in the history of PDP took place in Gombe State. And that's what I can say. Thank you.
All right, great. So we will talk a lot about governance in Gombe State, but let's begin by talking about your political history. And probably you could start by telling us why you moved from the private sector into mainstream politics, considering all you achieved as a banker.
Yeah, it's an interesting story, actually, and thank you for that question. Nobody has ever asked me publicly for that question, or why I ventured into politics. I believe that there are two key issues. First, for you to have impact on governance or on people or to help people throughout your life, you need to have access to leadership positions. And it's very clear that as there is so much you can do in the private sector, in the banking industry, you help people with their finances, but really to affect people's life in terms of development, take people out of abject poverty, be able to provide them support with the ways and means in which they can support their families, create jobs, okay, and ensure that our society is living up to its expectations. You can no longer sit on the fence. And more importantly, when the entire political terrain is being occupied to a large extent for quite some time by unserious human beings or by jokers, you really need to have people who are committed to leadership. Sometime in 2013 or so, I took my daughter to secondary school in the UK. And she came back home for the first time holiday, and we're going back for the second time. And on the train, she asked me, "Dad, why do you have to bring me here to the UK to study?" And that was a very important question for me. And I couldn't provide an answer. I thought she just didn't want to go back to school. I just didn't answer her. And she asked again, "Look, I think," in her words, "you are intelligent, you're smart, and you're successful, but you never came to the UK to study for your secondary school education. Why do you have to bring me?" And for me, that is at the heart of our problem. Our education system has collapsed to the extent that we ship our children abroad to be educated on a different environment, in a different environment, with different cultural background, and to a large extent, we didn't care about what is happening back home. And for me, I am grateful to this country that this country educated me to whatever level I am today, and in fact, provided me with funding and scholarship to get to where I am. But here I am today, now finding or looking for schools for my children, even secondary school, because the quality of education has so much deteriorated. And this is just as a result of bad leadership. Therefore, we can no longer continue to sit on the fence and accuse people for providing bad leadership without you participating or offering yourself. History will forgive me if I offer myself for service and I am not able to get to that position. But history and my children, I know, will not forgive me if I have the opportunity to offer myself and I fail to do so. And this is why I got into politics.
You know, I'm not surprised at your response, because that's about the same response I get from some of the private sector persons whom I've spoken with, who have ventured into politics, who believe that this is a good time to, you know, take the country back, as they say, putting round pegs in round holes. But I'm curious, why did you leave the APC and join the PDP?
Quite a large number of reasons. In particular, I felt that the APC, the way it was going in my state, Gombe particularly, is not providing the right leadership. I supported the current governor in 2015. I supported him in 2018 when we did the primaries, and I lost to him. I came second. And then I realized that he is not providing the kind of leadership that is required of the state. Our education system has crumbled. Our healthcare is in shambles. The poverty rate in the state is way beyond 67% or so. We have over 700,000 children out of school. If you look at it, the finances of the state has totally been destroyed. The economic of the state is in shambles. The public service has completely been destroyed by the state governor. And therefore, being in charge of the party at the state, the only option left for us is to look for another alternative platform so that we can challenge him on a good state before the public in the state, and be able to see whether we will be able to get elected based on what we will do for the state.
Well, based on your plans, I think the first step is to win. And you will be up against an incumbent governor who's who would only be rounding off his fourth term, his first term at a time. And I think one of the things that we know about Gombe State is that it used to be under the control of the PDP from 2003 till 2019, until the people of Gombe State said they were tired of the PDP, I like to think so, and decided to bring in the APC. So my question is, why do you believe that 2023 will be any different, considering the fact that the people of Gombe State had booted out the PDP?
No, first and foremost, the people of the state realize that given the activities of this government in the last 3 years, that they have made a huge mistake by giving an opportunity to the APC to run the state. Clearly, PDP, as you rightly said, Gombe State, as you rightly said, is a PDP state. Till tomorrow, it has remained so. The party was in disarray to a large extent in 2018, but we have regrouped ourselves. The party is more focused under the leadership of Dr. Ibrahim Hassan Dangombo, and that clearly the entire state, everybody has seen and realized that the most important thing is for us to rally around ourselves and rescue the state from the mismanagement that the state is undergoing under a kleptocratic government.
I think it's interesting that you speak so highly of former Governor Dan Kwambo and commend his leadership, because, as you rightly pointed out, it was under his leadership that the party crumbled in the state, lost virtually everything in the state in the 2019 general elections. Why do you think the PDP lost in 2019? And the reason for asking this is because in 2015, when the PDP lost the presidency and lost some states across the country, it still held on to PDP. It still held on to Gombe State in 2015. However, 4 years after, it lost to the APC.
Okay.
What changed within 4 years?
Well, to a large extent, if I can tell you, the APC government came to power on a platform of deception. Okay, so the people of Gombe State were totally deceived with bogus promises that have not been kept to by this current administration. And therefore, when you have someone who built his career on deception and who has a sense of entitlement and completely is self-centered and a kleptocrat, can go to whatever extent to deceive people, exactly what has happened, and that is how PDP lost the election in 2018, 2019. However, as I said, the people of Gombe have realized the mistake. They've realized that they have been sold a dummy or a monkey, and that they know that this time is the time for them to really change the direction of the state and put it back on the state of progress and development. Today, if you look at it, right from the National Assembly elections that they've done and the primary elections that they conducted of the APC, you can clearly see high-handedness and that people were not given opportunity to come back. The so-called people who are sitting at the National Assembly today, more than 70% of them were not giving back their tickets, or 60%. Danjuma Goje, the senators that is representing, for example, Gombe Central, you know the story of how he eventually came back and got his ticket. There was a very big fracas between him and the governor, and everybody knows that story. I don't need to go into that details. The other sitting House of Reps members, only 1 or 2 were giving back their ticket. The senator representing Gombe South has also been alienated, and somebody has been... So clearly you can see that the APC as a party is in disarray.
Is the PDP united?
Absolutely.
Do you have the support of the contestants that ran against you?
100%.
Do you know why I'm asking this question?
Yes,
Do you recall that in 2019, when the former governor Dan Kwambo lost, he blamed it on betrayal? He blamed the PDP's loss on betrayal. Now, in the PDP as we speak, one of the contestants who ran against you, Jamil Ishaku, I believe, he used to be a member of the PDP. When he lost in 2019, he decamped to the APC. Now he's back in the PDP. How confident are you that all these people are together with you in the PDP?
See, Sardana Gombe is a brother to me. I see him as an elder brother. There is no doubt about that, and I have high regards and respect for him. He has done very well. And I can tell you, the build-up to the primary election, all of us sat down together to say, what is most important is to rescue the state from the hands of a kleptocrat. And therefore, all of us are equal to the task. Each and every one of us in his own capacity is capable of actually taking the state to the next level. So what do we need to do? We need to bring our head together and ensure that we hold a rank-cross-free, fair, transparent primary election. That each and every individual, both winners will accept it graciously, and also losers will magnanimously give up to those who have won. And that is exactly what happened. We ensured that as a party that we held a rank-cross-free, fair, and transparent primary election. We all promised ourselves that immediately after those elections, anybody who emerged will all rally around him, because it is the party now that is important. It is the party that is supreme. We've held meetings, we've held consultations, and that is why you've seen there is nobody today among all those that contested that has left the party.
Why do you want to be the governor of Gombe State?
Okay, I tell you I'm from Gombe State, as you rightly know, and if you're from a place, the first thing you care about is that you look at the people in the state. I am concerned about poverty and hunger. You can see it walking on the streets of Gombe nakedly. Our economy has totally crumbled. Gombe is basically an agrarian economy, and we have a large number of small businesses in Gombe. All those businesses have crumbled, and that our agriculture is actually at the verge of collapse. And people are hungry, and people are not earning money. Thirdly, our healthcare system has completely been shattered. To a large extent today, what you see in our hospitals as basically, to paraphrase the words of some few previous leaders, mortuaries rather than hospitals. A hospital is supposed to be a haven of peace and tranquility. But if you go to the hospitals in Gombe, right from primary healthcare system that we have to the secondary healthcare system we have completely collapsed. The only healthcare system that is actually, so to speak, working is the tertiary. That is supposed to be referral hospitals have now become the primary healthcare in the state. And it's not able to meet up to the demands of the people. You don't see any improvements in that particular area. Thirdly, our education system is totally in shambles. You can see that we have an education system where the school feeding program, for example, does not meet the feeding requirements of the students. You find out that the facilities, the educational facilities, the primary schools are not there. You only see a shambles of contract scams that takes place in the universal basic education in the state. And friends and families and cronies of the governor are the ones that have been awarded those things. If you look at it, I'll go back to the healthcare issue. You see that the infant mortality rate to the age of 5 years, for each 1,000 births, you have 300 children dying. That is 30%. It's unheard of anywhere. You have a maternal mortality rate of each 100,000 of almost 1,550 women dying. All this speaks to the lack of facilities that will cater for midwifery and for nursing of our healthcare system in the state.
Well, just before you walk away,
just to that, let me just come.
No, since you're talking about health, you know, the statistics that you've reeled out are no different across board in the north.
Well, abject poverty rate in the northern Nigeria, and in particular in my state, as I said, is about 63 to 64%, and is a consequence of bad leadership.
Across the northern states?
It's a consequence of bad leadership in my state. I speak for Gombe State. That is the state I seek to provide leadership for. And these statistics are there. And the simple reason is not far-fetched. You have this level of poverty, and you have the resources of the state being plundered by a particular leader. I'll give you an example. There are budgetary allocations, appropriation made for the executive arm of government in the last 3 years is in excess of 32 billion naira, an average of 11 billion naira a month. And that particular branch of government only speaks to the office of the governor, the office of the deputy governor, and the office of the secretary to the government of the state. I doubt so much that if the deputy governor receives anything or the secretary to the state government receives anything. So one individual on a year-to-year basis receives about 11 billion naira to his pocket. Contrast that with the level of abject poverty in the state. Contrast that with the crumbling infrastructure in the state. Contrast that with the lack of education, healthcare. Contrast that with the outstanding pension liabilities of over 21 billion to those who have worked in the state. How are you going to explain that? You know,
let me take you up on some of the things you've talked about here. You mentioned the education situation in Gombe State and how it's abysmal. It's interesting that Gombe State is ranked 24th with a literacy rate of 39.3%. That's quite abysmal, as you have pointed out.
Absolutely.
Well, the question is, what exactly is wrong? Because I've spoken with a few northern leaders as well, including a couple of governors, who I agree that the problem with the north is that it's a challenge, I beg your pardon, to address the literacy issue in the north. What do you think is the problem?
Okay, again, I'll come back to it. The basic and the fundamental problem in Gombe State today is lack of good leadership. When you have a governor who decided to close down schools, for example, you have a school of nursing in the local government, you shut it down. You have school of legal studies, you shut it down. You have a university that has been developed, built, University of Technology, Kumo, in Akko local government. You decided not to only shut it down, but to surreptitiously go behind and purchase that particular university for your own personal benefit, then speaks so much to the kind of leadership that you provide. You're
saying the governor is the owner of the university now?
Well, I'm not saying he's the owner. He refused to allow the university to take off. He brought in some funds to come and buy the university under a bogus public-private partnership. I understand, from what I learned, that that is a subject of litigation now in the courts. However, I'm just trying to point out to you, based on your question, that it is a failure of leadership.
So what would you do? What would
the crumbling state of our education system in the
What would you do differently?
Thank you very much. First and foremost, leadership is about service and not to be served. Leadership is about giving and not to take. There are two major breaks that you need to apply in our state to solve the problem. One is to safeguard the treasury. That is the economy of the state. That is not a problem. We are all students of history. We know how to deal with physical problems. We can deal with it. The second most important element is that of public service. You must place people of integrity in key leadership positions.
Just a second. I asked you about education.
That is what I'm coming to that.
So just a second. In trying to improve the education in your state,
Yes.
how would you address infrastructure with regards to education. How would you address ensuring that the only qualified teachers are employed? And most importantly, how would you get the children to actually go to school? Because that's also a problem in the North.
Okay. Fundamentally, as I said to you, and I was trying to explain to you, you need people to work. And the public service is the engine room for each and every government. If the public service is not working, then nothing will work. That is the honest truth. Today, what we see in Gombe State is that you have a governor who has only overseers in ministries, directors that have retired, permanent secretaries that have retired have not been replaced. Those who are due for promotions have not been promoted. So when you don't have the engine room working, you cannot sit down and strategically decide or design or plan how to deal with the myriads of problems from various sectors, including the education sector you're talking about. That's where I was headed to. I'm trying to tell you where the root cause of the problem is and how to deal with it. You need to put people who are not corrupt in key leadership positions in the public service. Then you will sit down and strategize and plan on how to deal with these issues. The crumbling infrastructure, education infrastructure, can be dealt with if you say, I as a leader, not under my watch, are we going to make sure that we are going to make sure that not one single dime is being stolen. That is very key, because you must be honest, you must be trustworthy. Leadership is about keeping trust of the people. It's about being just, and it's about being fair. This is the fundamental problem we have in Gombe State. If we have enough resources that we can deal with in terms of providing those infrastructure, so long as those resources are applied judiciously to that particular area. You cannot sit down and appropriate 32 billion for your personal use and then appropriate 49 million naira for almost 116 children in the state per annum for feeding. That is not going to work. You cannot sit down and bring your family and friends and cronies to provide renovations rather than real infrastructure at bogus contract sums and put them on in terms of renovating classrooms, schools, and the rest of that, and yet expect something better to come out of it. You do not expect that a state government will expend almost over 10 billion naira in establishing a university and you never allow it to take off. That cannot solve the problem. I think our leaders need to understand the fundamental of this.
You know, one of the questions that I think you have skipped, or sub-questions that I asked you, is how will you get the children to go to school?
Absolutely. Thank you very much. As I said to you, I'm gracious to this country. I'm very grateful to this country, rather, that this country have educated me to the level of university at no cost to myself. And if those resources that are available to the state will be used judiciously to attract students back to school, ensure that there is proper feeding, ensure that there is proper accommodation, ensure that the curriculum reflects the yearnings and aspirations of the students and the society at large, because education must be for quality, must be for access, and must be for relevance. These are the qualities that you must look out in education. Once you are able to provide that, you will be able to attract children in a very conducive environment.
But how do you marry that with the concerns regarding religious barriers?
You see, I don't think there is any issue to do with religious barriers in terms of education. I mean, when we were children, some of us went to Islamic school or Quranic school. Some of us went to Bible school. Some of us went to Western education school. Each education, for me, is very important. There is no part of education that is not important. What you need to do is to have a policy framework in which both educational system and educational requirement of each and every group of people is being adequately catered for. Because anybody who decides to study Islamic studies or to study the Quranic as his own field of study, or somebody who decided to go to Bible school and study Bible as his own field of study, or somebody who decided to go to Western education, I can tell you that all of them are citizens of the country. All of them are indigenous of my state, and all of them have the right to choose what kind of education they want to pursue. And the state has a responsibility to provide a policy framework that will cater for these groups. And that is what we intend to do.
You talked about health. You questioned the government's attention to health. But then I came across a report from the government which said that it accomplished renovation and upgrading of one public health center in each of the 114 wards of the state. And it says also that each of the primary health centers was thoroughly renovated, provided with basic equipment, 24-hour light through installation of solar power system across all the facilities and drilling of boreholes to ensure availability of uninterrupted water supply, which is critical, of course, to quality healthcare, health services.
Terry, please, let's leave propaganda aside. I invite you to come to Gombe State.
This is not existing in Gombe State.
Well, I'm saying I'm inviting you to come to Gombe State. I would love to take you around the state. I have visited the 114 wards in the state personally. I have gone to each and every nook and crannies of the state, and I know what is on ground. I'm not talking politics here or to destroy anybody or to say something that is not correct. And that is not my character. However, my question to you is simple. How do you explain the infant mortality rate of almost 30% for each 1,000 births? How do you explain the maternal mortality rate of 1,550 for each 100,000 women that give birth? How do you explain the poverty level of 67% in the state, or 64% in the state to 67%? And the poverty level, the indices that you use to measure those poverty levels include the level of education, the provision of health care, and these are statistics that are there. So let nobody just bamboozle you with grammar. That's the honest truth.
Are you simply concerned about it, or do you have laid down plans?
Absolutely, I'm concerned and I have a plan for it. And to be honest with you, what is key, as I said earlier on, is to make sure that the resources of the state are judiciously used. Once you take the resources and apply it to solving those problems, you'll be able to get to where you want to get to. One. Two, we have a clear-cut plan of ensuring that the primary healthcare centers across the state have been actually rebuilt to world standard. We will provide the equipments and the facilities needed. We believe that we must provide secondary level of healthcare facilities of general hospitals in the states across the 11 local government. For example, I give you a typical example. The current administration gave a contract for renovating the hospital in Funakai local government in Bajoga town. And the only thing we witnessed there is just repainting of the walls to a light green painting. And to a large extent, apart from that, you see the contractor actually removing the window louvers and replacing them, saying that he's renovating something. When you go to Akko local government, the hospital that is there, I can tell you that the state government said they are going to build a new hospital. Without building a new hospital, they demolished the existing one, and without an alternative. If you go to Biliri local government, just about a week ago, the member representing Biliri West in the State House of Assembly actually wrote to the state governor, complaining bitterly about the state of affairs of the hospital, that to a large extent, the entire hospital's roof has been blown out because there is no any other shelter for everybody in the hospital, and that patients are now taken to other alternative accommodation, and nothing has been done by the state government. What we need to do is to provide an infrastructure that will last 100, 200 years. And we must carefully invest in those infrastructure to a world-class standard.
Will you make primary health care free?
Absolutely. We will make health care free at the state level.
Will you make basic education free and compulsory?
We will make it free and compulsory at all levels, because, as I said, I'm a beneficiary of a free education system. And I know that if the resources of the state are judiciously applied, that can be done freely and compulsory for all indigenous of the state.
Let's talk about the economy of the state now. The debt profile of Gombe State is, domestic is at 108.4 billion.
No, that's not correct.
And external is $35 million.
Well, the total debt profiles of the state is about 432 billion naira.
Where these stats I'm reading out to you are from the Debt Management Office as at March and July.
Look at the audited accounts. Look at the audited accounts. These, you did not include the interest obligations that are payable, which the Debt Management Office actually adds them together at 10% per annum for a 5-year period or 4-year period from the day these loans were taken to date. Actually, from the debt management report, is about 432 billion naira.
But do you blame the state governor, Inuwayaya, for this debt profile?
There is nothing wrong with borrowing. I'm a banker by profession. But when you borrow money for a purpose, you should utilize it for that purpose. and you should borrow the funds for adequate enough for what you want to intend to do it. I'll give you an example. The state government borrowed from United Bank for Africa 10 billion naira, the purpose of which is to finance the contract of installing solar street lights measuring 113 kilometers. This contract was awarded at the total cost of 6.9 billion from the borrowing. 113 kilometer stretch of road is actually 113,000 meters. Divide that by 25 meters, which is the distance between one pole and another. It will give you 4,520 poles. This contract was awarded almost 2 years ago, when the exchange rate at that time was around 360 naira. As of today, a double-arm pole that's been awarded at a gracious amount of contract sum is nowhere more than 360,000 naira per one. This includes the lamp, the pole, and the civil works for installations. So I take you back 2 years ago. It was actually around 120,000 naira. But we were gracious enough to give a contract sum of 200,000 naira per one, or even double it to 400,000 naira per one. This will amount to 1.8 billion naira. Meaning you have awarded a contract that we graciously decided to say it should go for 1.8 billion naira. At 400,000 naira per pole, you awarded it for 6.9 billion naira. That's almost 1.5 million naira per pole. Meaning 5.1 million naira has been stolen. This is what we're talking about. It's not so much about stealing 5.1 billion naira. It's that you have stolen the future of the people of the state. Because 5.1 billion naira will go a long way in funding education, in funding healthcare, in funding infrastructure that is much needed, water supplies that is needed. That's one. Two, there is another one I can talk to you about. You decided to give a direct contract just to fence the government house for almost 2.something billion naira. That is not your priority today. You decided to award a contract, for example, of water reticulation. You took away the contract from professionals people who are doing it, foreigners who are doing it for the water reticulation. And by the way, let me say this to you, that one of the major movements for the realization and the actualization of the creation of Gombe State is the fact that Gombe has had a myriad of water problem, and that the previous administration of PDP, under the leadership of Governor Anjumo Goje, tackled it head on. And Gombe came and continued along that route. But you came and decided to take away that contract from professionals who are doing this work. And by the way, it's a contract under, a partnership with the World Bank. And you awarded it to somebody who is not known. And today you awarded it at a cost of 11 billion naira. What I can tell you is that, Terry, the over-invoicing and the way you plunder the resources of the state is very disheartening. And I will tell you also that if, as a leader, you decided to go that route and you totally forget, you contrast that with the level of poverty and what you are taking in terms of a differential in over-invoicing, in terms of personal appropriation of public funds to your own self, how are you going to provide the much needed resources? And when you do that, that dovetails into the level of loans that you have in the state. Completely. You borrow 10 billion naira, you provide 6.9 billion naira of contract, 5.1 billion naira is stolen, another 1.5 billion naira for what they call Human Capital Management Limited, they were awarded for the purpose of biometric attendance. All these things speak so much, so high to heaven, how stinky that kind of governance is.
Well, we're speaking of loans. The PDP left a debt of 119 billion.
The PDP government of Tangombo left debts of not more than 70 billion naira. That is what they left. And we challenge the APC government of Inoyaya to come and give us the breakdown of those loans. I can tell you what those loans are all about. In 2015, when the APC administration came to power, what they did is to say, we want, in actualization of their campaign promises, we want to make sure that we provide those A, B, C, D to our people across the country. The 36 states of the Federation were all given salary bailouts, what they call budgetary support, what they call education support, all sorts of loans and supports were given directly by the federal government. Each state governor was mandated to receive those money. If you go and look at the debt profile of those 70 billion naira, amounts to that amount of money, including the interest rate that was accruing to it, including the interest that was accruing to it. But we challenged the APC government to come out clearly and give us a breakdown of what that 70 billion naira, or what the 119 billion naira they claim.
Exactly. So
let them come out and give us the breakdown. One. Two, I can also tell you that Langombo did not give a single commercial banking loan. All the loans were actually paid down fully from commercial banks. So as I said, all the loans that were left behind are government support loans and some external loans that came out in form of support, particularly for the water reticulation in Gombe. Wait. Then finally, in any event, we agree there are a debt profile of 70 billion. Tell us, what did you meet in the current account? Yes, I have a liability. What is the asset you have? The governor did not mention any of this. And I will tell you today in Gombe, today, the governor knows they'll be running on a negative cash flow. If care is not taken in the next 2 months, the state cannot pay salaries because he has nothing in his current account. So what are we talking about? You have accumulated debts almost 432 billion naira, and then your current account is in negative. You don't have any assets. In fact, let me tell you another interesting thing. The guy took over all the assets of the state that are supposed to be revenue generating and pulled them in a company called Gombe Revenue Optimization Company Limited, and put his bosom friend, closest ally, Akiteginusa Yakubu, to be the chairman of that particular company.
Unqualified?
Well, however so defined, I will explain to you. You take away the resources that belongs to the state and put it in a private limited company and hand that over company to your friend as the chairman of the company, and then borrowed 10 billion naira and gave that company both the revenue generating assets of the state, and borrowing of 10 billion naira is handed over to a company called Grocor. Meanwhile, on a monthly basis, Terry, listen to me, on a monthly basis, you are deducting money from the state coffers to repay that particular loan.
You know, it's interesting that you speak about the revenue generation of Gombe State and question and say he is running on a deficit, I believe.
Absolutely.
8.5 billion naira was realized as revenue in 2020.
That's not correct.
This stat,
the average revenue generation internally from the state is 2.5 billion.
8.5 billion naira was reported as the highest ever that the state has generated.
That is not true. What the state generates averagely is 2.5 billion. How can you generate 8.5 billion in 2020 during COVID year? Let me tell you, the car COVID, that is coalition against COVID, private sector coalition against COVID, provided huge support to the state. And this support that is there is what the governor has now repackaged as if he's the one providing support at that period of time. And some of those funds that came in were never reported.
Well, this governor Inuwayaya, has been commended by the president, by the vice president, and the CBN governor for his approach to governance. And Mr. Emefiele specifically said that he applauds his economic values. Was it just politics, or is there nothing to count? Because I recall that he was given an award, Gombe State emerged as the best state in the ease of doing business last year. That award was given to him by the vice president.
Terry, Gombe is Gombe. We're there in Gombe. The statistics are there for everybody to see. The streets are there for everybody to see. Are businesses thriving in Gombe? Take your phone and call all the businessmen in Gombe. They have lost their capital, most of them. As a consequence of COVID-19 also, nothing has been happening. Farmers have lost their farms. The governor deliberately took away, forcefully took away farms that belong to people, even farms that were actually started under the then Babangida administration's NALDA program. Okay, farms were also taken away from people in the name of building what do you call it, industrial park. Farmers are fighting along with herdsmen in Gombe today. In Kwame local government, around Bojude and Gadam, farmers are clashing with everybody because the man is taking over their farms. Widows and orphans lands that have invested their money in various lands in the state have been taken over by the state governor and trying to allocate them to himself. No one new company, I can tell you, that has been established, an industry or a manufacturing outfit in Gombe. I challenge anybody to come and tell me in the last 3 years. The ease of doing business allows people to, you have a, what do you call it, a very favorable investment environment where people can come and invest in the state. We're lucky in the whole of Northeast Gombe has been peaceful, thanks to Ibrahim Dankombo. You know the years of Boko Haram and what he has done in ensuring that the state remain very peaceful. And therefore, the ease of doing business will only relate to how favorable an investment environment is for people to come and cite their industries.
You know, considering how disturbed you are by the state of affairs of Gombe State, specifically the economy of the state, I'm tempted to ask you this. Is this where you come in? Because you have quite some experience in the private sector. You have degrees in financial management. You have in economics, risk, and general management. So I think if you win this thing, many would expect that you would turn around the fortunes of the state based on your experience. So how would your experience in the private sector come to bear in Gombe State?
Okay, thank you very much, Terry. We identified the problems. And why are we running for office? Is to fix these problems. How do we intend to fix these problems is what you're asking me. And I can tell you very clearly. First and foremost is the leadership we intend to provide. And as I said to you, we have two major breaks that will help us. One is safeguarding the economy or safeguarding the treasury, ensuring that the bleeding and the leakage from the treasury is stopped. Secondly is ensuring that we have a very efficient, agile, competent civil service of the highest level of integrity that can actually deliver on its mandate. But in addition to that, once you have these building blocks, the most important thing is to look at the state as a business. What are the assets of Gombe State that can help us drive revenue generation today? I have said this severally. Tax revenue does not develop an economy. What develops an economy is manufacturing, is industrialization, and to a large extent today, the level of technological know-how that you have in your state. And this is what we're going to focus on, these particular areas. In addition to that, Gombe is known for agriculture. Cotton production is one of the highest states that is rated in terms of producing the best cotton in the country. In addition to that, we also have grains, okay? In addition to that, we have hides and skin. What we need to do in the agricultural area, you follow the agricultural value chain and ensure it's working properly well. You need to revamp the various dams that are in the state. Balanga Dam has never been put to use. This administration, when they came to power, they actually scuttled whatever efforts were done in ensuring that the dam is working and providing water and access to irrigation and farming all through the year. What we also need to focus on is the exploration of our mineral resources. Gombe is very well known for gold deposits, for limestone, for coal. What you need to do is to, in a sensible way and manner, be able to attract the so-called providing enabling environment and attract private sector. And you as a government, sitting in the driver's seat, providing the policy framework and driving those kind of development, investment in the state for the development of the state. These are the things that must be done to turn around the economy, while at the same time not losing sight of providing the basic infrastructure of healthcare or revamping it, education and water and transportation that will fix the state.
But then there's also the issue of growing insecurity. I know you say it's largely peaceful, but then there's the Kalare group now that's causing some problems in the state.
Well, at the inception of the administration of Ibrahim Hassan Dankombo, he dealt with the issue of security and disbanded the Kalare group and created a program for the youth where you have the youth marshals in Gombe State, and they were all gainfully employed. Some of them were gainfully employed in providing security across the state in various sectors, and some of them in cleaning services and the rest of that. Unfortunately, when Ino Yahya came to power, he actually disbanded those programs completely. And that is why you see a resurgence of youth who are now jobless.
Well, he recruited some youths, hundreds of youths.
When was this? I mean, you came to power, you have about almost 15,000 youths that have been gainfully employed under a program of rehabilitation and everything. You disband it, and just suddenly now, because 2023 is around the corner, you started recruiting hundreds of people of youth. That is not the solution. That is hypocritical. You are being hypocritic. So the most important thing that we need to do is to have a holistic program of youth employment. As I said to you, we have 700,000 children out of school, but of the official statistics, 3.6 million people. Informal statistics, around 5 million people. You have the state evenly divided in terms of population, 51-49% men to women, of male to female. And then you have almost 78% of those are youth under the age of 20. It's a time bomb you are sitting on. What we intend to do is to provide for those adult education. We must invest in adult education because adult literacy level in the state is less than 40%. That is abysmal. So most of those people that can be trained in artisan jobs, these are the kind of things, vocational jobs, that we will be able to provide a platform to recruit these people so that we can solve that problem. Unless you are able to get them gainfully employed, they will continue to be thugs. And that is what I think this government wants to do.
Do you side with those who accuse the governor of inciting or instigating violence and disrupting the peace in Gombe State?
Not only side, the utterances of the governor are very clear. At various fora, he has openly called for violence. And I'll give you an example. He went to...
But this violence was in form of defense, self-defense. The calls he made when... I think I saw those videos as well.
Terry, you cannot call people to incite violence and say it's self-defense. That is not it. Self-defense doesn't come by what do you call it? Premeditated. It's not premeditated.
What were the words of the governor that suggest that he was inciting violence?
Okay, he at a commission at the government house, he called the commissioner of youth and told him, the commissioner of youth, get ready with your youth, and that anybody who came to challenge us, we will show him that we are here.
And he wasn't referring to the criminals or bandits?
He is not referring to any criminal. He is referring to Togri. His political Togri he is calling for openly. He has blocked Senator Danjuma Goje, a serving and sitting senator, a former governor. You block him from entering his own state. On what grounds? People lost their lives there. You think this office is worth losing people's lives? Human being is not something to joke with. You don't toy with the lives of people. Openly, the governor at an occasion called that the youth commissioner for youth and development should go and get youth ready and prepare for this election. Openly, he called that. So what do you call that?
Let's talk about the 2023 general elections now. You know, seeing what's playing out in the polity. Do you have projections for the PDP in the 2023 general elections?
I'm very sure that over the last 4 years or so, my people have decided. They have seen it. They have tested it. They accepted a deception from a from a proposed or a what I call it a prospective governor. He came in.
I'm talking about the PDP.
Yes, I'm talking to
elections.
Yes, I'm talking to you about the general election. I'm talking to you about the general election. You have somebody who came on the back of deception, who built his career about deceiving people and said, this is what we are going to do. All the promises have not been met. All. If you are in that position, are you going to re-elect that person?
Does this also extend to the president?
I'm asking you, if you are in that position...
No. Does this extend to the presidency?
You answer me, Terry.
No, I'm not. I'm not here to answer questions. Does this extend to the presidency?
Well, it's up to you to look at it. There are very clearly defined promises that the government has made. I would like to focus on my state. at this point in time.
I agree to that, but I'm asking you a question. As a member of the PDP, the 2023 general elections are just here.
Yes, absolutely.
While you are confident of winning the PDP governorship election in Gombe State, are you concerned about the chances of the PDP across board in 2023?
I am not. The chances of PDP is very bright.
Because in 2015,
across board,
you recall that the PDP lost virtually all the states it had at the time.
I agree with you. I will answer you straight. I'm not concerned at all. I'm very clear that the chances of the PDP across board is going to be 100%. I don't have doubt. Secondly, I'll give you an example. We've seen Osun State, if you want to speak about the nation. Osun elections are very clear. And INEC promised in Anambra they will give us a good election. They will give us a better election in Ekiti. And they will give us one of the best elections in Osun. I think largely, if you follow the trajectory of events and the application of modern day technology, I mean, votes will count. I have no doubt in my mind. And the consequence of which you could have confidence that based on the indices and the promises that have been made and where we are today in the country, there is no doubt about it that PDP will win elections. And that is why Osun was a very clear case.
All right, so with regards to our elections and the concerns of irregularities at polling units, do you have concerns, especially polling units in remote areas, which are prone to
That is where attacks? We have concerns. To be honest,
how can that be addressed?
To be honest with you, we are very concerned about polling units in very remote areas where you do not have access to data or you do not have access to broadband. And therefore, we are only hoping that the Independent National Electoral Commission will come out and make a clear and categorical statement. Because the problem you have is that once you start using incidence forms and you start now transcribing things in writing and that is going to be transported to a collation center, then that becomes a problem. There is no doubt about it. And that problem must be mitigated. I am clear in my mind that we must find a mitigating factor for that particular. BVS is great, and everybody is happy about it. We thank God that the INEC has implemented it, but I can tell you that so long as we are going to go to the whole hog, then we must make sure that we do not apply or start using those stories about incident forms and start using manual collation of result, and then we'll go back to the same problem. Right from the polling unit to the collation center, you will have ballot boxes snatches, you will have result swapping, you will have all those problems coming back again, and that has to be dealt with.
But regardless, you're confident of the INEC's ability?
No, to a large extent. To a large extent, to be honest with you, I'm confident that INEC will be a very good umpire, a very unbiased umpire.
Just before we go, you are, as a banker, one of the things that I know that comes with your profession is cutting costs. And I'm interested to find out how you will cut the cost of governance in your state. Okay.
As I said to you, the fundamental engine room for each and every government is a public service. Okay. And you must have people of competent and high integrity in key public service positions. Once you have people of competency in key positions, then that solves the problem. Corruption, as I said yesterday somewhere, is not so much the problem. People can steal money. You can actually arrest them and prosecute them. That ends it. However, when you fill in corrupt people in very key and sensitive position of directors and of permanent secretaries, what you end up with is that these are people that will corrupt the system, and they will become saboteurs to the system, and then corruption becomes systemic and becomes a cancer, and you cannot uproot it.
Here's something else that many have said that the government can do to cut the cost of governance, and that's taking its hands off pilgrimage sponsorship.
Well, I will answer you in this way. You cannot take decisions without taking the reality of issues on ground in your state at each point in time. Every peculiar problem, every problem has its own peculiarities, and therefore you must deal with issues within the context of their peculiarity. Now, pilgrimage is something that is religious in nature, that is very dear to the people, and it's something that the state will continue to provide support for the people. I have no doubt in my mind that you need those. I'm a very I'm a firm believer. I have faith, and I believe that you should be able to provide or continue to provide support to those areas. However, you must do it sensibly within the jurisdictions in which you are, within a policy framework that you must establish. And that is all I can say about that.
Mr. Muhammad Barde, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Terry.
Thank you very much. I wish you well
in
2023.
Thank you.
Well, that's Political Paradigm. Many thanks for watching. Remember that you can catch this episode and others on YouTube. Simply search Political Paradigm. Or go to channelstv.com and find this and more. I'm Terry Ikumi. Goodbye.